Our friends at Teach for the Heart decided to put out a social media post concerning grading mistakes, and we want to talk about that today.
The Christian Principles Podcast is brought to you in partnership with the Herzog Foundation. But bear in mind, the views and opinions expressed here are those of the hosts and not necessarily of the Herzog Foundation.
Welcome to the Christian Principles Podcast on the road. I'm Matt George.
I'm Mark Zockoll. These tend to go well because we're forced to be in the same space. We've talked about that before. We're excited to try a video angle. We're not able to do it in Riverside, so this is still low tech, but we're excited. Matt, where are we going right now? Well, we shouldn't. I guess that dates this podcast, so we shouldn't say that.
Yeah, no, we're just on the road.
We're just on the road. Anyway, like we said earlier, we're talking about our friends at Teach for the Heart. If you have not listened to Teach for the Heart, their podcast is available on the Herzog Foundation podcast network. Of course, Teach for the Heart has a very significant following amongst Christian educators, public and private school. I know their forums are places we've gone in the past to pull ideas for our series, and they are prompters of thought in Christian education. They're there for you as much or as little as you would want them to be there for you to prompt further thought in Christian education, further thoughts on how we as Christian educators should be operating and could be operating, and especially resources and time. And you could spend a lot of money with them. You could spend no money and still be blessed by their ministry. So check them out over there at Teach for the Heart. But specifically today, Teach for the Heart put out a social media post that described certain mistakes that are made in grading, certain mistakes that teachers should watch out for. And of course, when I see that post, I think, okay, not only as a teacher, but as an administrator, what mistakes do I not want to see my teachers making? What mistakes do I want to professionally develop away from? So let's walk through some of those, shall we?
Yeah.
Before we do that, even though we said we're going to walk through some of those, let's hear from our partner in the Herzog Foundation.
This episode of the Christian Principles Podcast is brought to you by the Herzog Foundation. As Christian educators, we know that liberty without truth is fragile, and truth starts with God. That's why the Herzog Foundation has launched the Faith and Freedom 250 campaign, an initiative that equips schools and families to connect the biblical roots of American freedom to the next generation. Having started on July 4th, 2025, and following through until July 3rd, 2026, Herzog is releasing short videos each Friday, highlighting voices from across the country, educators, leaders, parents, and everyday Americans, reflecting on key moments in our nation's history and the importance of commemorating 250 years of liberty. We all understand how faith has always been central to our country's founding and why it still matters today. It's an incredible way to integrate history, civics, and biblical worldview into your school's curriculum, especially as we approach America's 250th birthday in 2026. Visit herzogfoundation.com to view their free resources and get started today. And make sure to tell them that the fellas here at the Christian Principles Podcast sent you.
Okay. Grading. It's a beautiful thing.
So, Matt, I have been annoyed in the past when I have a conversation with an educator, someone who's walked through an undergraduate education program, and I'm still having to have this conversation of, I should be able to grade with lemons and sticks. I should be able to grade with Cheerios. I should be able to grade away from a 0 to 100% A, B, C, D, F scale. But to start away from the post and just on something that annoys me and that makes me go to this post and think this is a worthwhile thing to talk about, again, I should be able to, as the one who knows my content and knows the objectives of my grade level or of the expectations of the school, I should be able to grade with lemons and not have to pass out A, B, C, Ds, or Fs, not have to pass out 100%. I should be able to say, this half a lemon from me to you represents your mastery of a subject, because that's what grading should be.
And you, no lemons.
Yes, you, no lemon. No lemons for you. But whatever that marker of mastery. And I'm sure there'll be some discrepancies with where other people, what their other thoughts are concerning grading, but I need the teacher to understand that you are not tied down to you are tied down to the system the school has asked you to be tied down to. However, past that system, in your mind, you should be able to see the greater picture of, I don't care that Bobby got a 60, which is just into the passing range from the 59F. My larger care is that holistically, he has not mastered material that he needs to master, or he is not showing a level of mastery which allows me to think that he should be able to progress to the next standard, objective, quarter, grade, perhaps. And that has been frustrating to me to not be able to communicate that effectively to definitely to veteran teachers, but even to rookie, yes, but definitely to veteran teachers as well in the past, because that's just not fully grasped, because the ABCDF or ABCDF 100 to 0% scale is just so ingrained in education, so ingrained.
I think it's partly because, a bad set of grades, speaking like D's, F's, is it not a reflection on the teacher? They maybe take that personally, and then you get the full swing the other way, where you've got, yes, all A's, but are they all A students?
Yep.
I mean, again, a lot of variables. We're not just taking into consideration the true purpose of grades.
Yeah. Grades, they're a tool.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be helpful. They're supposed to be a marker. And again, this is also a frustration when a set of textbooks from a particular publisher prescribes a grading practice, and the school adopts the grading practice of that publisher and does not have one themselves. And so when the school doesn't have one themselves, the school entirely is at the mercy of that publisher's guidelines for grading, whether or not that school uses that publisher's guidelines for grading in all aspects, or if it's just in certain. And it's again, it's just not a strong place to be.
Right.
The other side is true, though, that if I'm teaching with lemons and my markers of mastery are lemons, and it's not a 100%, and it's not a 0 or an F or an A, whatever it happens to be. The same is true that, okay, those don't also necessarily fit every single category. So we started talking about the Teach from the Heart podcast's social media post about grading issues, and we haven't actually talked about them yet. But that is a great frustration for me, and that's where I would launch off from this. And I think some of that comes back into some of what we're going to discuss. Do you have any grading frustrations, or have you, when you think of grading frustrations before we get to this post, especially in the first through fourth grade style, do you have any that you would want to air? Any grievances you want to offer?
Similar ones. I definitely see a lot of the handing out grades for the sake of handing out grades, and I don't like that. And the other side of it, to the point of adopting a curriculum's suggestion, are we not making policy decisions based on our mission?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's where even grading has to go back to.
Absolutely.
So I would say in all that we're doing, we've got to have an objective purpose.
Yes.
For why we do what we do. And it's, yes, school grades have been a traditional staple for centuries. So, why throw out everything? I'm not necessarily saying, we need to go full lemon model. I'm not, we're not there, but still, I mean, it boggles me when I am arguing with students that their grade, even though it's a 95, is not terrible. It's not the end of the world. Like, because if it's not 100, it's not amazing. No, that's not, it's a proper misunderstanding, or parents coming in and blowing down my door because, hey, my child has a B average and that's unacceptable. Like, okay.
Yeah. Well, and yes, how many times, and again, I like how you said, we don't need to reinvent the wheel when it comes to grading. Now, certain schools do, of course. There is the portfolio model, where it is a literal massive folder at the end of the year, which informs whether or not that student is walking on into the next grade. And it's not about A, B, C, D, F. It's, have you accomplished all of these parameters? And we think about even the modern model of a hybrid or an online school where they are, which is not modern. It's a new mode of what has prior been a model of, you're going to accomplish this, you are going to master this set of this lesson, and it's an independent lesson, and it's independently taught lesson. It's not them in a classroom. It's the student with a guide that is either paper or now electronic. And once you've mastered that, then you may move on to step 2, and then step 3, then step 4. So there's not, the only assessment comes, and it's not graded, but it's graded to the extent that they have to complete it completely. But once completed, they're moving on to step 2, and they're not receiving some report card for that work. So lots of big picture issues.
Lots of stuff.
The second thing I want to say here is that we have to make sure that we are having a conversation which is limited. And even before we just got talking, we decided that we wanted to make sure we did not continue on with the same issues that we have or have run into the past, but we try to get too large in our conversations. We want to have limited conversations. And a way to have a limited conversation about these, one of the ways we can have a limited conversation about these grading issues is by keeping it focused on a smaller subset of grade levels. So, by the way, maybe your school doesn't have grade levels, so I know we're talking to a smaller body, but the grades we're picking today are going to be lower elementary. We'll say that subjectively, and then if you want actual numbers, we'll say 1st through 4th grade.
Sure.
Because we do believe there's going to be call for a different set of mistakes in upper school, or we do believe there's the possibility of having different mistakes in grading in the upper school or in middle school than there are in the lower elementary. So let's move on into what started our conversation, which is
so what are those mistakes? What do we commonly see?
All right. So the first one that they list out: don't test material that you didn't emphasize. Don't test material that you have not emphasized. So when we're thinking about 1st through 4th grade, at the top of your head, what is it about 1st through 4th grade teachers? What could they get wrong in their grading? Or when would we see this happen? Because I do feel as though this is probably more of a middle school, upper school level issue than it is a lower school level issue.
But where I would see it in that primary is kind of going back to what we were saying about curriculum grading. If you're allowing the textbook to simply, you bring in the publisher tests that go along with the text, but yet in your teacher's manual, there's a lot of like, you can do this, but you don't have to. And then you get to the test time, and the test that comes with the publication is saying, hey, we're going to assume you did everything. And so you're going to give this test to your students, and the students are going to look at it and say, oh, we never talked about this. Or you as a teacher look at it and you say, well, yeah, I guess I didn't focus on that a lot because we're being good teachers and not teaching to the test.
Yes.
I guess that's, while it's a mistake, it's also perhaps a mistake of us doing the right thing.
Yep. It's a warning. We make fun of people for doing that.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of what the main drive at that is. If you're looking at the grade book and kids are getting slammed because they're being tested over material that you haven't covered in the classroom, obviously we're going to see that as a problem. So,
man, I don't have anything else to add to this point. That one's fine. That one stands with what you have said. I think I don't really have much else to add to this. Good job.
There we go.
Yeah. All right. Number 2. It says testing before students are ready.
Okay. So yeah, similar point. And this is probably the bigger hurdle, not hurdle, but, easier one to not recognize because we're using assessments to be able to assess where students are. But we should have a pretty good understanding, especially when we're talking those primary levels, because you're doing the worksheets. You're seeing what they're able to do on their own.
Hopefully, yeah.
Versus you've got to be hand-holding through the whole assignment. So I can understand where you might need to, as a teacher, say, you know what? I know on my schedule, I've got this test coming up tomorrow, but we need a couple extra days. Do it.
Yeah.
Take the extra days. If you have that recognition within your class, then yes, that's what we want to do. We want to set them up to succeed, not set them up to fail. But then also maybe you give that assessment and you're shocked. Like, whoa, okay. I thought they were totally ready for this and they're not. There's nothing that says you cannot back up.
Oh yeah.
Take a big step back and be like, you know what? We're gonna toss that test to the side, make it a pre-test as opposed to a final test, and we'll test over this again.
Especially in the lower grades. And this is staying on point, going off point a little bit, but I want to make sure that what is being assessed in those lower grades is essential material. I was, as we get towards the end of my history and philosophy of education class, we come into contact with teachers, with the educators having to walk through carefully their thoughts on essentialists in education and progressives who see more than the read and write arithmetic, so to speak, the school ought to. Man, when I think about which grade levels I want to make sure are just pounding the fundamentals, it's those lower grades. I want to see multiplication tables. I want to see the addition, subtraction, that sort of thing come off their tongues without skipping a beat at all, which of course is, again, when we think more broadly, our brothers and sisters elsewhere who have concerns about we'll pick on the Common Core, the usual math tenets which go with what people put down about Common Core, are that there's so much of a focus on the alternative ways of arriving at a solution and the critical assessment, which would allow for them arriving at a solution a number of different ways and getting creative on that front, that we're introducing those high-level concepts at the cost of, because you don't have so much time in the classroom. So what you're not going to do is you're not going to memorize your multiplication tables through 12 times 12 or whatever it happens to be. Whereas I want to make sure that those students have such a fluent, I'm picking on math, but those students are so fluent in those math facts that, I'm not going to, I don't want my teacher grading, I want them assessing, as Matt said, I want them assessing continually, and I want them to assess the valuable material.
But it doesn't necessarily have to make it into the grade book.
No, not all time. No, not all time. No, I will, and we'll probably get there in a minute, but I'm way more excited about way more grades than fewer grades.
Sure.
So we'll see if we actually get there at some point. If we don't, we'll make sure we get there by the end of it. But so making sure that in these early grades, when I am, and we're saying testing, because assessing could be, we didn't talk about how this post is supposing that we're talking about sit down and take a test that is a traditional, you sit down, you read the question, you answer, move along, then we're going to grade that test. Assessments could be a number of different things. So whatever your assessment happens to look like, and to whatever level of your assessment's appropriate. And we even talk about percentages yet. There's something else. We'll see if we get there. Okay, so number 3, it says asking too few questions. Matt, how could asking too few questions be a problem in the 1st through 4th grade?
I don't think it's a problem at all. I think ultimately, aren't we coming down to the question of what are you actually assessing?
Yeah.
If you're not asking enough, are you giving them the best chance of truly demonstrating, expressing what they know? If you, even just word a question differently, ask the same question, but ask it differently, they might get it wrong once and get it right the next time just because they understand what's being asked of them the next time. So limiting your questions is also pretty much giving your student the least amount of opportunities to succeed.
Yep. We are bound by time in those classrooms. So we realize that giving them an opportunity to represent that knowledge to you written and then verbally and then with their hands in some kind of model is probably not very doable for every single assessment, though it would be wonderful if it was. However, for that baseline knowledge, we talk about what is being tested, it would be a much stronger thing for us. It would be a far stronger assessment if we did offer multiple modes. We would have better information coming off of those assessments if we offered those multiple modes, more reliable information coming off those assessments if we offered multiple modes. And so I know this is talking about too few questions, but too few questions is really one of the particular problems that would come with just poor assessment development.
Yeah.
Which, of course, we know that's a class into itself, and hopefully your teachers have walked through that class. And if you are, this is a call for you to identify, knowing you know your teachers and you know the programs they went to or didn't go to. And if you see that your teachers cannot come off of the provided testing material easily, and they can't create tests themselves, that's a point of professional development, which means you may not want to that year just go to whatever conference is closest to you, but rather you may want to bring in someone to have a 2-day seminar on this is proper, or maybe you do it yourself. This is proper assessment creation. Of course, again, we know that those are courses. Those are long courses.
Creation or even just evaluation. I mean, starting there because I mean, 9 times out of 10, 9.8 times out of 10, you're going to have the publisher's tests in front of you. If, as you were saying, you're defaulting to just using those assessments, are you really understanding what is giving my students the best opportunity?
Yeah.
And so even evaluating those, not just taking them for granted.
Yes.
So
yes, please evaluate those, especially because your objectives as a school may be far different than those.
Yep.
Who's to say that publisher out in Montana or wherever it happens to be was thinking about your school?
Yeah.
Other than the general thinking about your school when they created this assessment for whatever it was. All right. So then giving 1 grade to the whole group on a group project. This is cited as a mistake. Now, I'm going to say I don't see too many group projects in 1st through 4th grade, so we don't have to spend too much time on this one. Again, this goes back to understanding assessments as a whole, which goes back to understanding grading as a whole. We'll revisit this one later on when we talk about upper school grading.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, I mean, obviously, we're assessing each individual student. So that's where, that one can rest.
At the same time, though, I will say, please do not punish the entire class for the sins of one.
Yeah.
That was an issue for me. I had a teacher who did that for a recess thing when someone shut off the AC before we went outside because they were idiots. And because that one person didn't confess and we wouldn't turn them in, if I don't even know who it was, we all lost the recess.
Let's just
be very careful.
Honest. It was you.
It could have been.
Just fess up here.
Maybe.
Confession is good for the soul.
You
made everybody else suffer and you feel guilty. So therefore you are urging others, don't do that. So that I don't feel guilty.
I have a bad memory. It starts at the moment of the actions. All right, number 5, having too few grades in the grade book and they mentioned a quarter here, but shoot, for the week, for the day, for the quarter, definitely for the year. This is absolutely a time of in elementary, I want to know that grade book is stuffed full of stuff, and the assessments I want to be wide ranging. I want to include their hands. I want to include their recall, their verbal. I want to, let it be in 1st through 4th grade. Yes, their written work as well. But if it's all written work, I'm not happy as an administrator. On the other side, if it's all verbal, I'm also not happy as an administrator. That's also not good. That's where we have problems with the perhaps the aid given to certain students, which never pushes them to go outside of what they're most comfortable with.
Mhm.
Because we know that while we all have preferred methods of learning, that does not mean we're only able to learn in that certain preferred method. We are able to learn in methods outside of those. So there's absolutely there's absolutely an opportunity for us to make sure that we have been varied. What do you want to say about too few grades in the grade book?
I mean, it's the same thing. Are you giving your students the opportunity?
Yep.
And when you are, and let's be honest, in these grades, 1st through 4th grade, it's not like you have to go find opportunities. Like that 1st through 4th grade is chock full. Every single
Yes.
paper that they have is grade fodder. So that's not the issue. The issue would then be a teacher being very selective and say, you know what, I want this worksheet to be graded, but not these other ones. And that worksheet may be the weakest one for a couple of those kids, whereas they knock the other ones out of the park. So, you know, you got to be really careful. And that's where balance is as the multiplicity of grades is going to be your friend, because that's going to demonstrate the authenticity of your student.
Something else I don't, it scares me. It really does scare me. How many, as you look back on your administration, how many times have you been 100% confident that every single teacher's grade book and percentages in that grade book, and then the points that they have put into those percentages have all been statistically appropriate and not you said overrepresentation because of one versus, picking out one worksheet versus others. How about overrepresentation of the worksheets over what you need to be actually a meaningful assessment that carries a lot of weight?
Right.
I have so much angst, especially with schools, especially when we don't see, when we see teachers who have moved along, or we see turnover in teachers, or we see a teacher that has, what do you want, cold feet, and they're always moving, or a teacher that is quick to try the next thing. There is a call for the administration to, early on in the school year, be completely sure. And I'd ask you, like, how do you do this? How are you confident? Because if it's just you and you got, the 12 people you're responsible for as faculty members, or if you have a team of 50 faculty members and you got the 3 principals working under you, whatever it happens to be, how are you going about? What are your practical steps to going about making sure that your teachers' grade books have been reviewed to know that the percentages are right, to get a feel for, okay, when you give this worksheet, how many points is that? Is it point based? Is it percentage based? Do you have all those literally in your grade book? Whether it be, we're talking about learning management systems another time, in your learning management system particularly, how is that represented? Do your teachers understand how that's represented? Are you sure about that? Have you checked? Have you gone back to make sure no one just put in the wrong number? Because there's a big difference between 5 and 500, or 5 and 58 when their fingers just hit the button the wrong way. So that is definitely a point of angst for me. And hopefully it's a point of angst for all of us, because we could really be changing significant understandings of students' actual mastery if we're not appropriately mathematically, statistically entering the material.
Yeah. If again, saying early on in the year, just something to consider would be, having your teachers come to you and they say, okay, if I were to print off report cards today, this is what their grades are. Defend to me how that accurately represents that child.
Oh, good one. Yeah.
And just leave it at that, because the teacher's going to be able to quickly identify, yes, you know what, this is definitely where they are. No, it's a little low. Let me look into that. And that's where we want to get to.
Yeah.
Is not just, overwhelm the teachers and say, we want you to do a whole lot of extra work. We need to make sure everything we're doing is purposeful and is honestly within the best interest of our students.
Absolutely.
Or else it's not necessary.
It's a real problem otherwise. Okay. Number 6 is actually what we just walked into without further reading ahead.
Oh,
So
well, there you go.
So number 6
Smart.
is not having enough grades in a certain, or having too many grades in a certain subset of the grade book so that it is skewed. Wonderful word, skewed. We don't want skewed grades. So make sure that you are not setting your students or your parents or your teachers' teeth on edge by allowing teachers to put in a tremendous number of grades for a certain, and I've seen some crazy things in some elementary teachers' grade. I've seen crazy things in grade books all the way up and down, but I definitely see crazy things in the grade books of teachers that are veterans who are switching into a learning management system or switching into a new one, or not remembering that when they were really excited during teacher development or during professional development, that they put in 5 different categories for one content subject. So 5 different categories for Bible grading, different and with different weightings on each of those categories. And then once the year gets going and they realize just how hard that is to maintain, they don't put grades in for each of those categories and enough of them so that it's highly skewed. Or oftentimes what I see is as the quarter went on, they didn't have time, the bandwidth to actually just get them to get enough, or to get any grades into a certain subset of the grade book. So then it's not graded, or it's not represented in the grade book, which means it's not representative of the student that we're trying to see. So you got to keep an eye on that. That's a big deal.
I agree. What I was going to say on this point is, get rid of the unnecessary categories.
Yes.
And that's something we review often with our teachers. Just, there's great intentions at the start of the year, and then you realize, you know what? No, I'm putting far too much emphasis or too much weight in this category, and we're hardly ever touching it. So readjust, be flexible.
Be careful when you do that readjusting, though. Make sure you're doing it.
Make sure it's adjusting to be more accurate and fairly representative of where the students are. Mm-hmm. So yeah, absolutely.
That's a good point too. These teachers need to go through and actually look consistently and say, am I sure right now that what is being spit out at the end does represent my holistic understanding of the student? Now you got to be careful with that, because sometimes we revert back to the most recent thing that we were thinking about that student, and that's not fair to the students. But assuming that you can overcome personal vendettas, which we would hope for all of our teachers anyway, there's a value to thinking holistically, like, if at my school 2 lemons means average, I don't think that they're at a 2 lemon average right now. I really think they're more at, 1.5. This isn't where they need. But what's crazy is my grade book is saying they're at 3 lemons, and
there you go.
Now we got real problems.
There it is.
We need to move on. This is a long episode, I think. So we got to move on.
My hand is telling me it's been a long episode. Yes, it is.
Trying something new. We should get a tripod. All right. Who are we talking to? Who are we praying for today? Who's our Christian administrator?
Forget you got the spreadsheet.
So I think it is Craig Bouvier. Is that we got?
Bouvier.
Craig Bouvier.
Oh, sorry, Craig.
Yeah, Craig, whatever it happens to be, we are thankful for you. And Craig comes to us from
Greenville, South Carolina.
At Greenville Classical Academy?
That's it. That's the
Greenville
one.
Classical Academy, Greenville, South Carolina. Home of many Christian schools, home of many classical schools as well. And Craig, Matt's going to pray for you now. And hopefully your grade book looks tremendous.
Beautiful.
There.
It's a beautiful.
Yeah, with the Latin and the Greek. No, just the Latin.
Just
right? The Latin. Yeah.
I don't know. It might teach Greek.
Could be.
Well.
Could be.
Yeah. All right, let's pray. Father, thank you so much for Craig and his leadership there at Greenville Classical, and pray that you would give him the support he needs as he continues to encourage his faculty in good practices, but ultimately in encouraging them in their spiritual walk with you as well, and with the students and events that he has coming up. Just pray that you would allow his year to run smoothly, that they would see students growing closer to you each and every day. thank you for him and his heart to follow you. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. All right, everybody. Thanks for growing with us today.
We want to thank you for listening. We're honored that you spend this time with us each week. Our heart is to bring you practical conversations and resources that really serve you as a Christian school leader. One of the best ways you can help us spread the word is by leaving us a review and sharing the podcast with other Christian school principals you're connected with. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Join the conversation and share any posts that resonate with you. Every share makes a difference in helping more leaders find encouragement and practical tools. And remember, the podcast is just one way we help. We also love serving schools through speaking and workshops. Our keynotes and sessions are designed to give you actionable strategies you can take back to your team and implement right away. If you'd like more details, just send us an email at info@christianprinciplespodcast.com. We'd love to connect. Until next time, thanks for joining us on the Christian Principles Podcast.